Chapter 4, Part 2. Well, a little later, I ended up with a visit to the hospital. Don't really remember much about what happened. I am here to write this story, so I survived well enough to make grammar Nazi's eyes bleed. Back to Techwood. Not sure why we moved. I remember hearing a lady tell my mama that a man was looking for us. So, off to a new town we went. The next town was on the outskirts of Snellville, Georgia. I remember the house exactly. We must have stayed here for some short time that was longer than the rest. I think for so much of my childhood, I was not really nurtured to feelings, good or bad. So, I was unaware that I should have them at all. I do remember when I had experienced feelings that were good. It was any time people showed me kindness that were not of blood relations to me. Yet, I was really not allowed to have any time with other people that was not approved and supervised by my mother. We lived in a small town, 2-bedroom house with a carport. At this house, my brother and I had a bunk bed. I loved this bunk bed. I loved climbing that ladder to get to the top. Nothing made going to bed more exciting than climbing to the top of that bunk bed. I was always told that I was a dreamer. I had lots of dreams. If you remember me saying earlier, I could wake up in my dreams and fly. Well, no one ever told me that when I dream, I sometimes sleepwalk too. One night, when I was flying, I was really walking, and I walked right off the side of that bunk bed. I don't remember anything past that point, really. Just my mother forcing my mouth shut while I was trying to cry. In the hospital, they gave me something that made the pain go away, and then I fell asleep. When I woke up, strange people were talking to me about what really happened. I told them the truth, that I was flying to the moon. See, when I went to sleep, somewhere in that dream state, I partially woke up, because I could fly. I had no fear of falling. Moonbeams came right through my window. I wanted to fly to the moon. So I left my bed with my hand stretched out like Superman, ready for my journey. In reality, I was experiencing the sensation, having nothing surround my body for only a brief second. Like most lawn darts, I landed right on my head. Well, my face to be exact. My teeth ended up cutting through my lip and cheek. When my mother found me crying, she watched it tear across my cheek and get larger every time I opened my mouth to cry. They needed to do some experimental surgery, telling my mama they were not sure how it would turn out. Before I went to sleep, I heard my mama screaming so loud, "Oh yeah, I know what you fuckers do with experimental surgery." Seems as if my mama did not like my doctor because he was an Indian. Not the kind of Indian like Granny, but those that have red dots on their foreheads. I kept staring at his red dot till my eyes would cross. Too young to know that this might not be polite. Before I went to sleep, the men in the blue uniforms and shiny badges took my mama out for something to eat. When I woke up, I had stitches. They kind of tickled. I kept touching it with my fingers on the way home. Mama slapped my hand and told me to stop. So I switched out my fingers for my tongue. One night, when I was supposed to be in bed sleeping, I could hear Mama crying on the phone to her mama. "How am I supposed to raise Kaya as a girl with a scar on her face? It's ugly, Mama," she cried. Ugly. Now, that was a new word I started to hear more often. I did not know it was bad or that I should feel ashamed. But when I went to the new sitter's house, I watched Mama talk a lot to this new lady. Her name was Joyce. Every few moments, Joyce would lean over to look at me, biting her lower lip and making a face, shaking her head. Then she would go back to talking to my mama. As usual, I just sat there waiting till Mama's next instructions. This must have been some sort of interview, because when it was over, we went home. When we got home, Mama went over her normal orders. Now, Kaya, remember what I tell you. No acting like a monkey. I do not care what other kids do. There are a lot of kids at this new place. Do not give Joyce any problems or I will beat your ass. Do not let anyone touch you down there. Do not go to the bathroom with anyone. Joyce gives some kids baths because their parents pick them up very late, but you are not to get one. You are not allowed to go over to anyone's house. She watches a lot of children, so do not sneak off and stay close by. Make sure you ask for permission before you do anything. Yes, ma'am, I said. Mama, are there going to be other crackers at her house? My mother stopped, leaned away, and with an expression like she saw a ghost, she said, "Where did you hear that word?" At our other house, the kids call me Cracker, I replied. Then without hesitation, I added, "It's okay, Mama. I know I'm not a cracker. I am white chocolate." Then the expression of shock turned to fear. She placed her hand across her mouth, and her eyes started to well up. She stood up so fast the chair took off behind her. She paced around between the dining room and the living room, then turned back. With both hands on the table, she leaned in and said, "You are to never speak those words again. Do you understand me?" "Why, Mama? Is it because I'm not old enough?" "No," she said. "You are to never speak this way again, even when you're older." She balanced herself from the table to the floor. The cheap card-playing table that dubbed as our dinner table wobbled a bit. Seeing Mama on her knees was easy to remember. It never happened unless she was praying. Now I was taller than Mama and could see the top of her head. I remember being distracted and wanting to grab her hair because of all the hairspray that made it sparkle. But she grabbed my hands and said, "You have to promise to never speak about this. You have to promise to never mention my grandmother's picture." I had honestly never thought about her grandmother's picture till that moment. Then the very thing she said that sealed the deal. "Do you want me to go away? Or die?" Shocked at such words, I said, "No, Mama, please don't." "Well, then never, ever speak of this again. Forget it ever happened. Because there are some people that do bad things. There are some people that can hurt or kill your mama, maybe even you." At this time, I immediately started to cry. It was all a bit much to take on, nor did I even understand it. She wiped my tears, which was the first act of motherliness I can think of. Then she said, "Stop crying right now. That's an order. How about we go and buy you any toy you want? Then we will go to get a chocolate-dipped ice cream cone from Dairy Queen." But I did not want a toy. My mother had never used bribe tactics on me before. Just the fear of her being mad or threat of her beating me was enough. But that did all seem to change once I went to a kid's version of heaven on earth. "Toys are us," the sign said. And you could see it over a mile away. I had never seen it up close before. After parking, I thought it would take a day just to walk to it. When we got there, I was so overwhelmed. Toys went from the ground all the way to the ceiling. I was never allowed to ask for things, especially in public. I had already learned numbers because Mama stared at them for long periods of time in the Piggly Wiggly. I would watch my Mama pick up the food that had the least amount of numbers. So I tried to look for low numbers, then would look over my shoulder. Mama seemed to be thinking about something else. I kept seeing things that were very nice, but I knew Mama was poor. She even had a worried face at everything I looked at. I did not want her to worry, so I turned around and said, "Mama, I don't need nothing. Can we go to Dairy Queen now?" She replied, "No. Pick something. Something you really like. I want you to like it so much that you play with it all the time. Every time you play with it, I want you to remember the promise you made me, so you have no reason to forget it." Funny thing, I stared at her for a little while, looking into her eyes, because I almost forgot why I was there. Well, after passing another aisle, I saw this kid yelling at his mama. I just stopped and watched. I could not believe this was happening. The kid was smaller than me, and he stomped his feet and told his mama no, then screamed as loud as he could and started to grab toys and throw them. Me and my mama just stared for a second, while this kid's mama was trying to pick up the toys, asking him to please stop. Just about the time Mama almost commanded me to follow her out of this aisle, I saw the boy throw a stuffed raccoon. It must have been the way it landed, because it was just staring up at me. Then I remembered the story of the Velveteen Rabbit, and I ran towards it. I picked it up, then started to walk back to Mama. The little boy stopped yelling and then screamed out, "Give me back that toy!" I turned and looked at him and shook my head no. I was not going to let anything happen to this poor raccoon. I looked at my mama and shook my head no with a please no mama look in my eye. She walked right up to me and stared at the kid and said, "It is not yours." Then turned to the lady and said, "You should really beat his little ass for treating you like this in public. You should be ashamed of yourself. You are the adult here." I do not care what was said, only that she let me rescue this raccoon. I immediately loved this raccoon, so I did know what love was. I was not ever going to let anything happen to it. We went to Dairy Queen to have our dipped ice cream cone. Mama ordered a banana split. That was like the biggest ice cream I had ever seen, and it had at least 3 numbers and 3 scoops of ice cream. Mama sure was spending a lot of money today. I watched my mama stare at me. She really did not eat much of it. She just shook her head while I talked to my raccoon that I had named Bandit. Bandit was my new best friend. Since I was not allowed to have any, my mother laughed when I asked if he wanted any. I said, "What? What is it, Mama? Why are you laughing?" She just placed her hand on her head and said, "Of all the toys you pick to save, you picked a coon. Don't forget our promise. Tell no one." So days were very long at Joyce's house. Some kids were older and would get on a giant yellow van the size of a house that stopped at the top of the hill. The top of this giant hill was at the end of Joyce's driveway. When Mama would drive down to drop me off in the morning, it was my first experience of what it may feel like to be on a roller coaster. It was very scary. Then walking to the door alone while Mama watched, Joyce would always open the door for all the kids that were being dropped off. Past the front door was a staircase going up or down. The one that led you up brought you to the kitchen. Off to the left, a hallway that led to bedrooms, but we were forbidden to even walk that direction. Off to the right, the living room. This is pretty much where we all stayed most of the time. There was a TV at Joyce's house. It was pretty big and had wheels on it. The rabbit ears that stretched up were moved depending on what channel Joyce turned the dial to. The only time in my life I remember being allowed to watch TV was at Joyce's house. It was even encouraged. This is how Joyce kept so many children quiet. Cartoons were only on for a little bit, early in the morning and afternoon. Then Joyce would watch the news, followed by her stories, as they were called. Not sure why anyone would watch such things. They were awfully boring, and the women seemed to be upset at the gentlemen all the time, even when the gentlemen told the ladies the truth. Goes against everything I just learned. They did a lot of arguing that would lead to face slapping. I learned very early in life that when a woman was mad, she would slap a man, and then he would kiss her for it. It seemed that this is what the woman really wanted anyway, because she was not happy. So I learned that when a woman slaps you, she wants a kiss. Sometimes on these shows, people would get in fights, get shot, or just go missing. You could tell this did not make Joyce very happy, because she would disagree with the TV, then stomp off to the kitchen. Well, when summertime came around, there was a lot more kids. Joyce made mandatory nap time for us younger kids and made the older kids play out in the backyard. It seemed that too many kids in the house would not keep quiet during her stories. Nap time was in the basement. It was a very large area and did not look like a basement. It looked like the house, but bigger. There was all types of blankets on the floor with a little walkway for Joyce to check in on us. There was up to 40 kids down there at nap time. Usually, after lunch, we were made to have nap time. I would look around and see kids much younger asleep. They always had bubbles or boogers coming out of their nose. My mama never let me get away looking like that. Anytime Joyce made her way down to check on us, the steps would crick at the top. You had to be asleep, or at least look like it. It was the summer of 1982, and I was going on 6. My last summer as a baby. I was going to go to school soon and jump on the bus with the other big kids. The only reason I was in the basement is because Mama told Joyce to not let me play outside with the other kids my age. Joyce came to the basement for ice-cold Coca-Cola, then back up she went. I spun around on my stomach so I could look about. Much to my surprise, another girl was looking right at me. "You're supposed to be asleep," I whispered. "So are you," she whispered back. I caught her staring at my face, and then she asked, "What happened to you? Why do you look like that?" "I crashed when I was flying to the moon," I said. "The moon?" she replied. "Yes, I fly sometimes when I want to." She smiled in disbelief. "Are you a boy or a girl?" she asked. I did not want to answer, tired of my face being studied. I asked, "Why are your eyes all funny looking?" She smiled and proudly said, "I have my daddy's eyes. You look like a boy. You are not very pretty." "I don't care. I don't want to be pretty," I snapped. She kept staring at my scar, and then she said, "Do you want to be friends?" "No," I replied. "Why not?" she squealed. "Be quiet or we'll get in trouble. My mama told me to stay away from other kids. They will only get me in trouble." Then she crawled over closer to me, and I said, "Stop it. What are you doing? You're going to get us in trouble." She said, "I don't care." Then she crawled directly on top of me. "My name is Julie. Julie Tanaka. What is yours?" I was nervous and kept trying to listen for the noise made by that first step. I whispered, "My name is Kaya. Kaya Brady." Then all of a sudden I saw feet. I gasped. Julie did a Bruce Lee roll and laid right on her mat. I did not know it was a Bruce Lee roll move then, but after meeting Julie, I was fascinated with Bruce Lee. I closed my eyes, praying that Joyce did not see us up. The fridge door opens and closes, and she returns upstairs. Just as quickly as Julie had hid, she returned and laid by my side. I rolled over to mine. She just looked into my eyes and said, "Why won't you be my friend?" I told her, "I cannot have friends. Mama won't let me." She stared at my face and replied, "What kind of mama won't let you have friends? You look like you need one." I got mad and said, "Stop staring at my face. I know I'm ugly. Don't look at me." She sat up and said, "You're not ugly." I sat up. "You just said I'm not pretty." She smiled and said, "You are not pretty. You're cute." Confused, maybe this kid was playing tricks on me too, I rolled to the other side. Then Julie scooted up next to me and placed her arm over me. I jumped away. "What are you doing?" Julie said, "I'm trying to cuddle. Don't you know how to cuddle?" "It's easy. Just lay down and hug. It's great." Well, I was saved when Joyce made her way down the steps to wake everyone up. That did not stop Julie. That very next day, she continued to make her way over to my mat, every day during the week and all summer long. When I laid down for nap time, she crawled up next to me and hugged me the whole time. Sometimes she would tell me stories of things she did with her mom and brother at home. It was fun to hear about how other families lived. She was my secret best friend, and I was truly happy. I never did tell Bandit, was not sure how he would handle it. Then about a week before school started, Joyce was very upset. Her husband, which I never saw in person, only in the pictures on the wall, decided he did not want to come home anymore. So he went away and left Joyce with her 3 kids so she would not be lonely. It was okay. He had a nice lady to keep him company. Not too long after that happened, I remember being in the living room for afternoon cartoons. We were watching Tom and Jerry, and Joyce left the TV up very loud. She did not even yell for anyone to be quiet when she passed by. She had the same look on her face that Mama had most of the time. I watched her walk away, past the kitchen, to the hallway, where there was an invisible line we, the kids, were never allowed to cross. Then to the back bedroom door she stopped. Her head dropped, and she went in. Later, there was a loud boom that came from the back of the house. It may have been hard to hear by the other kids, with all the noise coming from the screaming, laughing, and the TV, but I had heard that boom before. In the past, Joyce had told me to stop being so nosy. It was not like I ever interrupted or talked, just sat close by sometimes like my mama told me to, 'cause there was nothing else for me to do, and it felt good to be close to people. She made fun of me to one of her visitors after she scolded me. "She is such a strange little girl, just sits and stares all the time, never talks. And that scar on her face doesn't help. Her mother, God bless her, works all the time. She is divorced, so it's not like she's going to have a normal life. No respectable woman from the South would." Just because I never spoke did not mean I could not hear or understand. So when that gunfire went off, I remembered what Joyce told me. I turned my head and faced the TV to mind my own business. All us kids knew the moment when a car pulled down the driveway, 'cause you could see the headlights shine through the curtains. Then you knew just whose mommy it was by the way a kid would scream with joy and start running down those stairs. Parents did not even have to get out of their cars. Honestly, unless it was the day to pay Joyce for sitting, they would not. Each day, kids would march slowly up the stairs like prisoners and run down the stairs like free men. In the afternoons, most kids would run to the windows to look out, those giant windows, hoping it was their mama. If you happened to be in the car going home and looked up to see the kids in the window staring out, you were happy it was not you. My mama always came late, so I just made my way from the busy floor to the couch as spaces came available. Then later there was a knock at the door. Only a few of us left, so we all peered over the couch that was next to the railing, looking down patiently to see who would enter. Joyce never came to the door, and eventually it opened. It was my mama. I jumped up and mimicked everything the other kids would do and went to run down the stairs ready to leave. Then Mama asked, "Where's Joyce?" I said, "She went to her room." Mom got to the top of the stairs and saw what remaining children were still in the living room staring her way. Mama always liked to come in. She would talk to Joyce and get a full report on my behavior. Mama waited for a little bit and then called out, "Joyce!" She looked down that long hallway. Mama must have known that this area was off limits too. She only took one step and stopped at the invisible line. "Joyce!" she loudly called out again. Then she started to slowly walk down the hall. "No, Mama, we're not supposed to go down that way. Please don't go, Mama. There was a big boom, don't go." She turned and looked at me, then back at the door, and ran to it. She tried the door handle, and it would not open. She shook the door and knocked at the same time, saying, "Joyce, it's Karen. Can you hear me? Open up, please." Now all the kids that were left, I'm guessing about 4, stood there with me watching from the living room. Then I watched my mama throw herself against the door several times, till I heard the breaking of wood and she fell inside.